and turn this over to Eddie. So thanks, Eddie.
Hey, everybody, and happy Wednesday night at 9 p.m. And thanks for joining us. We have a very cool discussion planned. My name is Eddie. I just threw up all my social media. If you ever want to get a hold of me, I am a brother of Delta Sigma Pi. I help people. I like to connect and build relationships. Love going to national events. So if you want to connect, that's all my info. We are going to be talking about some fun stuff tonight. Personalities, high conflict situations, toxic personalities, contrarians. We're going to cover a lot of things, how employers use personality tests, how how you can use a personality test to your benefit. We'll go over all that fun stuff, and we'll talk a little bit about philosophy just because. My background, I was initiated 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, in the University of Miami. I am now out of Palm Beach, Florida. I had the pleasure of being the chair of the Leadership Foundation during our centennial celebration on our 100th year birthday. That was a whole lot of fun. We raised a bunch of money. I've had the pleasure of being a board member, regional vice president. I got my silver helmet, which means 25 years of service. And I am one of the folks that grade hundreds of scholarship applications every year for the undergrad and grad scholarships, which is amazing. We love seeing Delta Sigs. That's really what we see what you're up to is these scholarship applications. So I love being on that committee. I also had the pleasure of being a keynote speaker at the 2017 Grand Chapter Congress. That was a whole lot of fun. Got to speak to 1,000 brothers. That was really neat. And being a brother of Delta Sigma Pi has really given me all these opportunities. And this is probably I've spoken maybe over 40 times at different events, and each time I do it, it not only it benefits me in my career. So Delta Sigma Pi offers so many different cool things to stay involved. So there are so many ways to use it even after you're a collegiate. And I see a couple of people on the call today that would agree with me. So in my professional world, not only am I a lawyer, but I am one of the owners of the firm. We're called equity partners. There's 8 of us. We oversee 20 attorneys, and we have a staff about 50 in addition to the attorneys. We bring in over $12 million a year, so we're not a Fortune 500 company, but we're significant. I have been a board certified family attorney my entire, well, I was board certified in 2004 or so, but I've been doing family law my entire career, 25 years. Family law is high conflict, it's toxic, it's poisonous. For me, it's really rewarding because when you can take those situations and de-escalate them, and really change people's lives in a meaningful way, it's like being a fireman and like pulling someone out of a fire. It's really cool. I'm also the director of public relations for my firm. That means I'm involved with a lot of people, a lot of agencies. We interact with a lot of charitable causes, and we're very involved in our community. Speaking of community, yeah, I'm involved. I'm on the board of directors of a couple of things, the Center for Child Counseling. That is a great organization. We have a $5 million a year budget where we give counseling to kids going through traumatic events that would not otherwise afford it. For example, if you're taken out of foster care, we go out there and assess the situation and figure out what services the child needs and make sure that child gets those services and follows up. I am also the director of legal education for this organization, and we do legal, they're called certified legal education for attorneys. And last year we raised about $100,000 just for charity, just doing seminars like this, but for lawyers who pay a lot more than register for free. There's something called Leadership Palm Beach County, which is like an umbrella organization for all leadership and charitable organizations in Palm Beach County. I currently serve on the board of directors. I ran their youth leadership program for 11th graders where they take the 50 best and smartest students in Palm Beach County and we put them through a leadership program. And I've also enjoyed being a Boy Scout leader for 15 years. I have two boys of my own. They're now college age. I also sit on a charitable arts advisory board for Kelsey Cares, and I have a love of the arts. So not only am I a litigator and a dad, but pretty busy in the community. I'm 50. I know you would never guess that, right? I'm this young looking dude, but no, I have some experience. My wife, who is a whole lot more pretty and fun to talk to and charismatic, her name is Jackie. I get to say she's my wife and my brother. We have one of those relationships, real special. My two boys, there they are. One looks very much like me. I just started something new, jujitsu, because I like to do crazy, uncomfortable things because I have this philosophy that if you take yourself outside your comfort zone, you're going to be comfortable with a whole lot more stuff. So this is me. My coach is actually got this sly little look on his face as he's choking me out. This is a fun photo shoot we had to do for a magazine, and I'm actually being choked out in this picture. There's a series of pictures until I turn purple. And if you've never been choked out, extremely humbling experience. I recommend it for everybody. I love to cook outdoors. I have 4 dogs, 2 chickens, and 2 sulcata tortoises. What is that, you ask? They're big turtles. So these are the ones on the left are the parents, and these are my little babies. So we care for a bunch of stuff, and that's my life. So I have work, I have my duties to my community, and my duties to my family. So I have this interesting perspective. In my law firm, personality testing is something we employ. Everyone who has a job with us, including the attorneys, get a personality test. We also do something, we do intelligence testing. We apply the Wonderlic test. It's the same test they do for NFL players. But personality tester, we use them to gain insight into who people are and really what motivates them. From my perspective as an employer, understanding the personality of a potential hire can shed light on their work style, on how they might fit into my company's culture. And I don't think we're the only company that requires this kind of testing. And we find it super helpful in evaluating potential new hires. There are many different approaches to doing this, right? Maybe you've heard of the DISC personality test. This is the one I am familiar with because this is the this is the one my firm uses. DISC is used to understand the candidate's behavior within the working environment. And each letter in the DISC acronym stands for one of the 4 classifications. We'll get into that in a second. This is really important because it teaches employer a candidate's whether a candidate's behavior aligns with our values. The results of the test will indicate which behavior type best applies to the candidates and which how they compare to your company values. If you're looking for a successful candidate, planning ahead in terms of how you manage new hire will be simpler if you have the results of a personality test like DISC. Once you understand more about your candidate's behavior or type, among other factors such as their skills, you can then begin to think about management styles going forward and how you are going to manage that hire. Whether the candidate needs more guidance or structure in the approach in their work, or for example, if they work better independently. These are all things that a DISC profile will teach you. Here's a diagram of it. So as you can see, we have an acronym DISC, and that is each represents a separate behavioral style. So in the upper left corner, we have the D, which is for dominance. And before I was tested, I thought I was going to be a dominant personality. A person, but I wasn't. I'll tell you which one I was, which was a surprise to me. Someone who is a D personality under the DISC profile is someone that has an emphasis on accomplishing results, seeing the big picture. They are confident, blunt, outspoken, demanding. Kind of sounds like me. The Ds make up 9% of the global population, so it's kind of a rare profile. They are highly competitive, aggressive, decisive, results oriented. They like to move fast, they take risks, and they get things done now. D styles like to be in charge, control, and they have power. They use a little I because it's copyright. And if you want to take this profile, you can learn so much about yourself, and we'll talk about why it would be advantageous for you to take this. But if you go online, you could, I think my company pays about $30 a test, but we do a lot of them. I think you could probably get it done for somewhere between 50, $75 if you're interested. We'll talk about why you would want to do that in a moment. Going back to I styles, they are creative problem solvers who think outside the box. They are great at encouraging others, at motivating them to take action. They keep environments positive because of their enthusiasm, their optimism, their cheerful sense of humor. They will go out of their way to keep things light, avoid and negotiate conflict, and keep the peace. The type I personality is likely not good with detail. They are more concerned with tangible results of the organization. They may not be the best listeners. They may give the impression that they are listening when really they're just waiting to speak. In some cases, gestures and facial expressions are overused. I'm an I, not just an I, but I'm a heavily weighted I. And that was kind of a surprise for me because I thought I would be a take charge kind of guy. And instead, I am an influencer. S is a steadiness. The person in the S category shows cooperation, sincerity, loyalty, dependability. They tend to have a calm, deliberate dispositions and don't like to be rushed. The S personality type is the most common DISC style at a global level. It makes up 32% of the population. Oops. C, almost done here. Conscientiousness. A person with a C quadrant places emphasis on quality and accuracy, expertise and competency. They enjoy their independence, demand the details, and they usually fear being wrong. C personality styles are accurate, they're precise, they're detail-oriented, they're conscientious, just like the title says. They are perfectionists. They have high standards for detail, high standards for themselves, high standards for others. These are the four basic quadrants. Now, within the quadrants, you may have traits of other ones. So when you take the DISC profile, it gives you so much information as to, for example, will this person take a project with little direction and complete it? Or will this person do it great but needs supervision? In my line of work, I guess you could call it crisis management, because we're not just doing divorces. Typically, the cases we're involved with deal with unusually high conflict. My billable rate is one of the highest in the county, so people don't hire me unless they have some really crazy problem. So I have people on my team, and I intentionally try to have different personalities. It's super important for me to have an empath, an empathic personality, someone who is the motherly type, a caregiver. And it's also important for me to have a perfectionist. Right now, I'm blessed with two paralegals that kind of share similar traits. And, the tool for me is figuring out really how to maximize those traits to get the best production I can out of my team. And if you have their disc profiles, you can kind of understand and really fine tune that projection. Now, the disc profile is not the only one out there. It's just the one I'm familiar with. I've been using it for 9 years in my experience with my firm. There's the Myers-Briggs type indicator. This looks at 16 categories of personality traits. A little different, not that familiar with it, to be honest with you. And beyond that, there's a whole bunch of other types of personality testing, all used by HR people assessing when they're doing vocational assessments testing. So there's plenty to choose from, a lot of subjectivity. This is all, psychologically based. So why is this personality testing useful for the testee in the workplace, right? Understanding your own character is a tool. You can kind of figure out your own career path. If you want to understand your own skills and interests, then having insight, will highlight those things that you need to really focus on, either on your resume or when you go to interview. It helps identify potential promising career paths. If you are an empath, you would make a great nurse, right? So when considering any major career move, you can use a personality test to kind of guide you in that vocational development. There's also another type of expert that actually does, a vocational assessor basically does some testing and tells you what you would be great at in your life. What is your personality and what is your skill set? What's the best job out there? And those are all things that you can do if you're not certain what you should be doing. It also, these tests, if you have this insight, you know how to present yourself positively to your employers. So, if you know your traits, and if you took a disc profile and you go into an interview and say, well, I'm a high D with some I, tendencies, and they happen to use the disc profile, you're already going to have a leg up, because they're going to know that you're kind of evolved and have that self-knowledge, and you care that much to understand what's going on. Nice to identify your best work environment. If you're extroverted, you're not going to do well working at home at a computer. Real simple stuff, but it goes much deeper than that. I'm just giving broad stroke examples. And by the way, I see there's a couple of you out there. If any of you wants to pop up and talk about something, ask something, please interrupt me. I'm happy. I'm a trial litigator. Throw stuff at me. It's fun. So you can also figure out challenges in a potential work role or environment, right? You can understand, what you're willing to tolerate, what things you're not. There are some work environments that, frankly, I would not go into because of my own personality. All right, Carl Jung, and we're going to talk. This is the philosophy part, and I'm really big into archetypes and the collective unconsciousness. And this is the guy who kind of came up with this initially. His name is Carl Jung. He is a Swiss psychoanalyst. He was around with Jung. He thought of the world differently. He had two different theories. One was the personal unconscious. Those are, things that happen to you. For example, if you put your hand on a stove and you get burnt, that stove hurts, right? It burns. That's a personal experience. That because of an experience that you had. But he also taught us about the collective unconscious. And this is the kind of mind-blowing stuff where we talk about archetypes. Like, what is innate behavior? How does a bird know how to fly south for the winter, right? It just does it. So Carl Jung has discovered that there are threads, and it doesn't matter where you are, but there are common threads that go through the universe. My 2017 keynote at Congress talked about the archetypes of the hero, and that's just going to be like one point of this discussion. But we drilled down and basically explain how mankind has a common experience. And if you're paying attention, you will notice patterns that evolve, and these patterns in life reveal themselves. And once you notice them, then you can understand it's going to happen again. And there's cycles. And once you understand that, things in life become much more predictable. But you have to have kind of an understanding of what these archetypes are. An archetype is an anthropological term to denote a universal or recurring mental image or theme. So what is a mental image or theme that we have across the board as, in the human condition? So for personality archetypes, we have 12 of them under what Carl Jung came up with. And this is now deviating from modern personality types to going back, over a century and discussing how these archetypes initially came up. We're going to talk about each one, go through them real quick. And, I want you to be thinking about things that you see in maybe yourself, maybe other people's around you, because it's kind of interesting. We all kind of fit into one of these roles. And of course, that's general statement. There's always exceptions, and some of these merge, but they're archetypes for a reason. All right, let's get into some of the details. First, we have the innocent, right? He is an optimist who can only see the good in people and in life in general. The innocent enjoys simple things. They're pure at heart. They are free of corruption. The innocent archetype craves happiness at all time. They embody sincerity. They are always truthful. They're one of the most sympathetic characters. They inspire people to be good and pure in every way. The greatest strength comes from their ability to easily trust. They are genuinely interested in other people's well-being. Next, we have the Everyman. Now, the Everyman kind of celebrates the virtue of being the common man, giving people, kind of a sense of belonging. The Everyman character archetype is representative of the audience. This archetype has to do with working hard, living a simple life. Their primary motivations are to have a sense of belonging and enjoyment. They crave creating and forging connections with people. In literature, the Everyman character archetype is often put into extraordinary circumstances and situations, and they just try to survive the circumstances that they find themselves in. Characteristics: they enjoy simple pleasures of life. They're democratic but not political. They're easily accepting of people. They enjoy being a part of the group. They don't like the elite. They do not like pretense. They're genuine. They're the Everyman. The next one, my favorite, the hero. Like I said, I can give a 90-minute speech on this archetype, and I have. The hero represents the process of overcoming obstacles, right? To achieve specific goals like finding a treasure, saving a princess, taking your team and achieving its year's goals. The hero is the oldest and most popular archetype that is used in our society. Joseph Camp calls this the monomyth, or the hero's journey. The hero is usually an expression of our collective unconscious, that whole Jung theory. They strive to maintain justice, fight against evil. The ability of the hero to stay true to themselves is ultimately what makes them heroic. Their events leading up to their birth are unusual. There's a departure from their family or country that causes them to stay away, gain new experiences. A turning point occurs. The hero is introduced to a more dangerous world. Depending on the story, the hero could be given supernatural help or gets access to some kind of special weapon. The hero goes through a great trial and completes his journey, returning to restore order and peace. But by going through this process, they're evolved. Another good one, the villain or the outlaw. Rules are made to be broken. And without those ready to test the status quo, we wouldn't even have rules. The outlaw or the rebel is a fiction favorite, striding through their worlds with a confidence bordering on arrogance and shaking the foundations our society has always known, often doing so with little or no help from those around them. The outlaw speaks to the base of the human desire to break free of rules and constraints of regular life. They are known as the revolutionaries, misfits. The outlaw is the archetype for the revolution. Independent and radical, the outlaw employs outrageous, disruptive, shocking habits to shake those they interact with out of complacency. Though the outlaw can be a strong advocate for change, the methods they often employ to get the attention of their oppressive can be dangerous or misguided. They can also be dogmatic about their own perspective and outcast those who do not fit their definition of good. They often alienate their friends, those who would otherwise support them. Our next personality type, the explorer. The explorer speaks to the need of freedom, adventure, independence. The explorer archetype is a soul type that is on a journey. They like to experience new things, stay off the grid. They represent probably 9 to 10% of the population. They do not depend on others for self-awareness. They do not like to be caged, and they are extremely independent people. I love that Bill Shatner. And if you don't know what that last slide is, you're missing Romancing the Stone. You got to check that movie out. Explorers are inquisitive. They're methodical in performing their objectives. They are resourceful. They're cultured. They appeal to the youthfulness and are usually ahead of their time. They strive to live a fulfilling and authentic life. They are aware of current trends and are eager to try them. They value freedom and don't like conflict. Our next personality type, the artist or the creator. And this is our creative personality. If you love art in all its forms, artist is a very sensory being. They enjoy experiencing the world around them through sight, sound, touch, feel, taste, and at the very core is connected to the earth, the universe, and their spiritual side. They see beauty in the smallest things and enjoy abstract concepts and ideas. Our next personality type is the ruler. The ruler seeks to stop chaos basically by taking control. It is out of the ruler is one of the most recognizable archetypes, but also one of the most easily corruptible. Leading is the most defining trait, but they like to volunteer, take charge of situations. They are usually the fairest and just people in a group, and they have a constant need to wield power. They are usually politically pretty savvy and well connected. Some characteristics: natural born leader, high status, prestige, conscious of their image, charismatic. They choose their words carefully. They're cautious of their actions. They have multiple skill sets. They have a system of policies and decisions. Their relationships and roles are defined and stable. Next one of my favorites, the magician. The magician is an archetype associated with mystery, alchemy, transformation. A magician archetype, they are thinkers, creators of sacred space, and usually visionaries. Yes, I think Darth Vader is a visionary. The magician archetype is defined as the carrier of secret knowledge. They have strong beliefs in their abilities and dreams. Magicians find solutions to problems with science or supernatural means, depending on the story. It is commonly found in fantasy, fiction arts, and films called healers, shamans, medicine men, the magician. In contrast, the lover. The lover is the archetype of emotion, feeling, idealism. It represents play, sensual pleasure. They like to live in a moment. They're appreciative of their physical environment. They try to be more attractive physically and emotionally. They crave intimacy. They enjoy being in relationships with people. The lover archetype is known as a friend, spouse, team builder, partner, sensationalist. The lover. The caregiver, super important. Like I said, I need a caregiver around me to assist me in what I do because people are going through trauma, and I need someone that can help absorb some of that poison, I guess. But the caregiver is an archetype that is fulfilled by taking care of others. They're moved by compassion to help others. They're known, other words would be saint, parent, helper. This is the most selfless archetype because they just desire to protect, help, and care for others. They offer sustenance to vulnerable. Their values are generosity, self-sacrifice, empathy, selflessness. They see the good in most and respond with reassurance. They try to please everyone they come across. They're also known as altruist, nurturer, helper, mother. The trickster. Who knows a good trickster, right? This is like the classic clown. Dubious jokes and deceitful manner can lead the jester to being assumed to be purely negative influence, though in reality, they can be a loyal ally and challenge an individual to break out of the conventions and rules where society has placed them. The trickster is capable of forward-thinking strategy, planning out future moves to great effect. They possess great intelligence. The trickster may also have a gift for entertaining others. The sage, like who do you think of when you see the sage? I always think of Obi-Wan because the archetype known as the sage is just depicted as a wise old man. It's a profound philosopher. I know no one better than Obi-Wan Kenobi. A sage archetype search is for the truth, no matter how uncomfortable that truth is. They see the world objectively, and they are always analyzing details. They are dedicated to spreading the truth, and their word choice is always well thought. They are custodians of wisdom, and their goals are inward. They do a lot of self-reflection based on the truths and facts that they discover. They are great advisors. They see patterns where others do not. And they are also known as scholars, mentors, experts, teacher, guru, philosopher would be another name. So something real interesting in Carl Jung's work, this is just kind of a fun side note. He kind of was the first scientist to document that a person who suppresses their sexuality, and whether you're a guy or gal, we have masculine, feminine traits running through us in some level. And if you suppress those, it creates problems. And this is the first real area that I see gender dysphoria really being discovered. So, that concept goes back a little bit now. So let's talk about the contrarian. A contrarian, I think, is a needed personality for any organization. Now, a contrarian can be a real pain in the hiney. It could be that person that is always negative and is always complaining and nobody wants to hear from. But those are really important people to have in your organization. And if you don't have that nagging voice, you always end up with unintended consequences. So, we give a whole seminar on contrarian leadership, but this is just noting that having friction in an organization is really a healthy thing. It creates great ideas. It creates, by going through friction, it accomplishes, it creates such a better work product if people challenge what you say as opposed to groupthink. There's a great quote. The trouble with most of us is that we would rather be ruined by praise than saved by criticism. So if you are ever in a leadership position, you have to expect to be criticized. If you're in a true leadership position, you're making tough decisions, and there is no way you're going to make everybody happy. No way. Impossible. And the people you don't make happy are going to criticize you. And if you cannot handle that criticism, then that's going to hurt whatever organization you're a part of. So if you choose a leadership role, toughen up. I think the phrase is suck it up, buttercup, and get some thick skin. Here's Jonathan Stein real quick on being a contrarian.
With over 7 billion people in this world, someone's involved to find a way to stand out. It's easy to feel small, like your voice is unheard no matter how loud you scream. Is there a way all of us can still individually make an impact or make a difference, despite the unlikely probability? Yeah, not really. We're doomed. Just kidding. My thesis is in fact yes, but it comes with a catch of being slightly unpopular. Modern society has deemed it rather taboo to broach ideas that make us feel uncomfortable. And the realm of comfort is an environment from which all of us must escape if we hope to propel mankind forward. And the individual who braves the cold outside of that blanket of comfortable thoughts is the contrarian. I submit to you that we live in a world created by contrarians, people who challenge tradition, question the status quo, and understand that society does not determine how you think. These individuals have shaped the world we live in today and are undaunted by taking their turn at returning to the fray, the battleground of ideas.
That is Mr. Stein, gives us,
7 billion people.
One other speaker, one of my favorite philosophers, Maynard James Keenan. He's not going to talk about contrarian, but he is going to talk about this friction that I'm talking about and how friction can be beautiful. So bear with me one moment with Mr. Keenan.
Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid friction. Somewhere along the way, I found it in myself, a desire a calling to embrace friction, tension, transitions, changes, and to work with them. You don't really need a mathematician or a psychic to understand that life is change, life is friction. For some people, that's kind of a daunting realization that gravity is going to win. Gravity doesn't cut anybody any slack. Or you can just choose to work with gravity, kind of work towards those changes, kind of work and embrace that idea of the friction and work toward a solution, a life-affirming resolution. For me, that's kind of what life is. Life is working towards those resolutions. It's working with the tension and the friction, because that's where art is. That's where the art occurs. And the purest art, the best forms of art, are those ones that actually capture that moment, that edge. And that's kind of what we have in Arizona across the board. Nice edges everywhere. A good example of that friction and tension, cello. You take wood, you bend it into impossible shapes, curves, angles, a place that doesn't want to be, not breaking, just on the edge. And then you string it, not to the point of breaking, just on the edge. And then you take that bow and you place it across those strings. And there it is, the release, the art. Sonic joy, sonic sadness, sonic anger, all within that release. And what's really appealing to me is that people who actually can capture those moments, capture those frictions, those changes, that's very inspiring to me, and that's why I do what I do.
So I think that's pretty inspirational when you look at friction like that, and I think that cello is a really good metaphor to demonstrate how that friction can produce art. So don't quell the friction. Don't run away from it. Sorry. All right. When you go too far, and there is, let's talk about toxic personalities for a quick moment. There is a book called the DSM-5. Now, let me just start by saying I am not a mental health professional, but I play one on TV. And as an attorney dealing with high conflict divorces, I deal with a lot of psychologists, and there's this book called the DSM-5 that talks about all the mental disorders or mental traits out there. And there is a psychopathy, sorry, I have a speech impediment, a psychopathy that is described as antisocial personality disorder, ASPD. ASPD could be anything, it's a spectrum, from narcissism, and there's 5 types of narcissism, to being a psychopath or a sociopath, right? And you hear about these things on TV and you think that you will never encounter one, but 3% of the male population are psychopaths, 2.7% females. So that's like 3 in 100. So if you know 100 people, you know 2 or 3 psychopaths. I wrote an interesting article with a psychologist about psychopaths in family law, and we called the article 1 in 17. And we did the math and the statistics. Basically, the thesis of the article was 1 in 17 divorce cases involves at least one psychopath. If you do the math. So the article was about how to deal with psychopaths in a divorce. But toxic people show up in everywhere. You could be in a relationship with a toxic person. You could be working with a toxic person. A toxic person could be in your organization. So how do you deal with that if it exists? It's a very complicated question. Part of my practice is doing domestic violence injunctions, and that's to protect people civilly if they're in fear of being a victim of domestic violence or repeat violence or stalking or cyber stalking. And there's some really crazy people out there, and these people hurt other people physically, financially, emotionally, and once they're in your life, it's very hard to extricate them. So we're going to talk about one method that this is usually advice I give to my clients who are in high conflict situations. And, may I first pray that none of you have a toxic person in your life. Odds are you will, or you will know someone that does, and maybe with a little knowledge you can help them. A toxic person is a vampire. They just take all your energy and they don't give anything in return. They have the tendency to bring out your worst. They gaslight you, and that's when someone knows you well enough, they know how to get you mad and crazy, and they hit that little red button we call a trigger. They invalidate your feelings and emotions. So to deal with all that, this is not something I came up with, but there's something called the gray rock method, and it's as easy as it sounds. If you have a toxic personality in your life, and probably the worst thing that could happen is if you spawn or have children with a toxic personality, then you have to raise children with them, and then there's all kinds of theories of parallel parenting, and so be careful who you spawn with. Take it from me, a divorce attorney. But you want to become a gray rock, literally. You want to become as interesting as a gray rock. What does that mean? Well, it's a strategy of dealing with abusive, manipulative people, and it just means becoming unresponsive. A toxic person would want a reaction from you. They would want you to react to their gaslighting. So one way to gray rock, just avoid the person if you can. Cut them out of your life. That's the best way. Sometimes, like I said, if you are in family, you have kids, you may not be able to cut that person out of your life. If you have to have interactions, keep them brief, keep them vanilla, provide no personal information whatsoever. If you can, just stick to short one-word answers. Do not ever show them emotion, because they are trying to invoke emotions. So if they see emotion from you, that little Pavlovian response of pleasure goes off because they achieved their goal. So you want to be as unemotional as possible. That way, if someone is, basically trying to get a response from you, the thought is eventually they will stop. The more you engage with a toxic personality, usually the worse it gets. So in my little perch on this world comes from dealing with over 1,000, pairs of couples that have gone through this process. And when you get a divorce, the saying is, in criminal law, you see bad people on their best behavior, but in divorce, you see good people on their worst behavior. And you really do, because, it's stressful, changes, things are out of your control. So these are all ways to kind of de-escalate high conflict situations. And this is the advice, like I said, I give to people in abusive relationships to help them cope with those relationships. So I am definitely PD bad. If you need me, this is my email. We got a couple minutes here. I'm happy to chit chat with anyone who wants to further any discussions, or it's past my bedtime. I can let you all go.
Yeah, any questions? Thank you, Eddie. That was great information. Very insightful for sure.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And I think this is our last seminar of this semester, right?
We have one next week on financial services. So if you're looking for a career in financial services, join us. I believe it's on the 13th. So head out to the website and you can register for that. And then we have the next 6 months of next year planned out and on the website. So go take a look and see what we have coming up. But thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Last call for any questions. Let me see what's in the chat there.
I see Sue has one question. Can people move between or not fully defined by specific archetypes depending on? Yes, this archetypes, there's like in the disc profile, there you could be a tent pole, you could be a D up here, I down here, and they all interrelate. And the more diverse you are, the more information you will get. As for the Jungian archetypes, those are just his examples, and you probably could see a little bit in different archetypes in people or yourself if you're really trying to be self-aware. I think that's all the questions in the comments.
Perfect. Well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. Again, thank you, Eddie. Wonderful info. Good to see you. And hopefully we'll get to see everybody again very soon. Have a great night.
Be good all.